Well, I wouldn't be jumping off a bridge, but I would be concerned.
This week in Pennsylvania, new polling in 7 battleground states. Good news for the former president, not so good for the current president. We'll break down the numbers. School vouchers were in, then out during last year's budget negotiations. It's a contentious issue, and it's once again in play. And speaking of thorny issues, lots of Catholic and private schools win titles in high school sports. Public schools accuse them of recruiting, and they want separate championships. Hello and welcome to This Week in Pennsylvania. I'm Dennis Owens. We're covering hot topics in PA policy and politics, as well as the issues important to you and your family. Well, the primary election is in the rearview mirror. The focus now is on November 5th. You may think the United States has an election. It doesn't. There are 50 statewide elections, and of those, 7 states will likely decide who wins the presidency. New polling numbers from Emerson College and The Hill suggest trouble for President Joe Biden. Donald Trump leads in all 7 battleground states. As you can see, North Carolina, it's a big one, 5.2%, but all the rest of them within the margin of error, which is plus or minus 3%. In Pennsylvania, Biden trails Trump by 2.9. Yes, there's still a long way to go. Yes, there are still a lot of things that can and will happen that could move the needle, but the warning signs are certainly there for Biden and Democrats. Now joining us, Matt Taglia, Senior Director of Emerson College Polling. Thanks for being with us. If those numbers hold, Donald Trump is the next president, right?
Well, Dennis, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's, of course, that margin of error. And so, within most of these states, President Biden and former President Trump are neck and neck within that margin of error. But if the election were held today, all of these states show that Donald Trump would most likely win these states.
Well,
but that's not to say the election's over.
How surprised are you that all 7 of those battleground states lean Trump?
I am a little surprised. We did think that potentially some of those so-called blue wall states in the northern Midwest would hold out for Biden. But, as you said, there's still time. I think we're going to see a little bit of flip-flop as the months progress.
This is the top line number. You ask a lot of different questions. What was the biggest surprise that you saw in the numbers in this project?
I think the biggest surprise we saw was that in Pennsylvania specifically, the union vote is relatively split, with President Biden winning around 54% of that vote. I expected to see a little bit more momentum towards one candidate or the other. So that was a surprise.
So the Biden camp has set up offices all across the Commonwealth. What should the president be doing? They might be listening to you, Matt. What should they be doing to reverse the trend?
Well, I think we've seen some positive trends from some of these younger voters. They are breaking for President Biden in higher numbers than we've seen previously. But I think he still needs to keep his foot on the gas there. Issues that matter to these folks are the cost of living and inflation, and then drilling down into some of these deeper issues, housing affordability. That's a big one for these voters. It's a big one for undecided voters overall. And so I'd focus on those issues going forward.
Matt Taglia, thanks so much. You're going to continue to keep an eye on the numbers, and we're going to continue to report it. We thank you for being with us. Well, the pace is quickening at the state capitol. Budget due in less than 2 months now, June 30th. There are lots of big ticket items that need to be hashed out, many of them in the education arena. One of the big fights last year, remember, was over school vouchers, and guess what? It's back. The governor wants an historic $1.1 billion on top of last year's historic K through 12 public school funding. Democrats are pushing for the extra cash. Republicans want vouchers, which would let lower income students use tax dollars to go to the school of their choice. Democrats flat out refused on that last year. The dispute delayed a completed budget to December that was 6 months late. Education Secretary Khalid Mailin was asked this week if he can guarantee in this year's budget no public money will go to religious schools.
The word guarantee is tough. I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't box myself into a guarantee. However, again,
Mailin reiterated that everything is on the budget table right now. He's also trying to overhaul higher education in PA. Senate Republicans call that plan not ready for prime time. They're pushing their own plan. 2 competing plans. Did I mention we're less than 2 months till that budget is due? High school sports are huge in Pennsylvania, and passions run deep. A lot of public schools are frustrated at what they call an uneven playing field. They support State Representative Scott Conklin's bill that would create separate championships for traditional public schools, which are called boundary schools. That is, they have a defined district to draw players from. and non-boundary schools, which can get student athletes from anywhere. Unfair, Conklin insists. His bill would let teams play each other in the regular season, but then create separate playoffs to crown champions.
Let's think for the young kids that we have involved in our sports programs. Give them an opportunity to compete for a state championship on a level playing field.
Now, I just spoke with PIAA Executive Director Bob Lombardi, who said they'll follow the law, whatever it is, but he reminds that all schools were joined by law in 1972 so that all schools were treated equally. He adds it's a misconception that all private schools recruit and no public schools recruit. He says it's more about specific schools than quote-unquote boundaries. And just for the record, producer Rachel Cherry crunched numbers for us this year. Out of the 59 team titles for the PIAA championships, 25, nearly half, were private or charter schools. In boys wrestling, private schools swept both divisions. Only one public school won a state championship for girls basketball. Democrats in the State House finally pushed through mail-in ballot reforms that county commissioners have sought for years. On a party-line vote, they approved pre-canvassing, which would let counties open the envelopes and sort the mail-ins up to 7 days before the election. Currently, they cannot be sorted and prepared for counting until 7 a.m. on Election Day. Counties had complained and asked for change. But is pre-canvassing still a priority? Some say no, that the state now sends additional money to counties so they can hire more people and requiring them to stay on the job until the counting's complete. Republicans argue the bill that passed the House this week would remove that requirement and let counties decide on their own how quickly to count those mail-ins.
Which means you're not going to find out who the president of the United States is because it's coming through Pennsylvania. So all eyes will be on us. The question is, do we want to be another embarrassment to the country, or do we want to handle our stuff election night? That bill will make us another national embarrassment for the second election, presidential election, back to back.
So that House bill heads to the Senate. Its fate there, very much unknown. A potentially awkward press conference question directed at Governor Shapiro, the owner of an iconic sandwich roll company this week. Martin's Potato Roll and Bread Company spent $120 million to expand its Franklin County plant by 300,000 square feet. Well, the state provided $670,000 in grant money for construction and training, and the governor showed up to tout it. But the Martins family backed hometown boy Doug Mastriano against Shapiro in the gubernatorial race, and a reporter asked them about that.
We may not agree on everything, but we agree on business, and we agree on helping Pennsylvania. And it's more important, I think, in politics when you want to help the people that you're serving.
Let me just say, I don't care who Tony supported. I don't care who anyone supported in the campaign. I'm a governor for all Pennsylvanians. And Martin's is a critically important business in Pennsylvania.
That expansion creating 127 new jobs. It should begin production on May 15th. Should nurse practitioners be able to do more without direct supervision of doctors? Doctors' groups predictably say no. NP advocates predictably say absolutely, and they're pushing a bill that would ease those requirements. They say nurse practitioners are perfectly capable of diagnosing and treating a lot of medical problems, but they can't without the costly supervision of a doctor. The balancing act is between getting more people treatment versus patient safety.
And so by improving the footprint of nurse practitioners throughout the Commonwealth, we will be able to accommodate patients when and where they need it.
There's a lot more clinical experience as far as training that goes into being a physician than being a nurse practitioner.
27 other states already allow nurse practitioners to practice independently. Well, Pennsylvania is an aging state. Long-term care and nursing homes will be key, but advocates are sounding alarms and warning bells. We're going to talk about that coming right up.
This PA Chamber Minute is paid for by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry.
Here in Pennsylvania, we vote with our stomachs. And for the second year in a row, Pennsylvanians have voted the Permane Brothers sandwich, an almost famous Pittsburgh classic since 1933, as the coolest thing made in Pennsylvania. Over the past 4 weeks, social media users casted more than 95,000 votes for 64 products across several different industries from every corner of our state. Big congratulations to the team at Permanis for going back-to-back and beating out other Pennsylvania staples like Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, Crayola Crayons, Mrs. T's Pierogies, Yingling Lager, and so many more incredibly cool Pennsylvania-made products. You can relive the excitement of this year's competition by going online to pachamber.org/coolest-thing and see how it all unfolded. See yous next year.
Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We have two guests today, Zach Shamberg, Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, and Garry Pezzano, Leading Age PA. They are both nursing home and long-term care advocates. Thank you both for being with us, and thank you for all you do. I want to quickly set the stage. Pennsylvania is an old state and getting older. By 2030. 1 in 5 of us will be 65 or older. Garry, you and I are in that group. Zach, not there yet. Nonetheless, you both reached out independently, which is interesting to me, saying we got a major problem with what's going on. Zach, lay it out. What's the problem?
And I'll be there soon, Dennis. It's clear. It's the fastest growing demographic in Pennsylvania is age 85 and older. As you noted, we are a rapidly aging state, and we're at the point now where the baby boomers are aging into the demographic that's most in need of long-term care. At the same time, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen more than 20 nursing homes close. We're seeing changes of ownership, reorganization, sales, and maybe most alarming, we're seeing nursing home providers today essentially shut their doors because they can't afford to care for new residents or they don't have enough staff to care for new residents.
The reimbursement rate per patient per day is not what it costs these homes to actually provide the care. Is that right, Garry? And what's the answer? What's the fix?
Well, the answer is that there is absolutely no care without workers, and there are no workers without a pipeline for workforce and money to pay them. So we're in a crisis right now, and crises, right? Crisis is workforce, crisis is underfunding, and it all culminates into an access to care. As Zach said, putting beds on hold, closing units, closing entire nursing homes.
Well, and Dennis, to that point, the system today is underfunded to the tune of nearly $600 million. We actually think that will eclipse $1 billion this July when rates are recalculated. That's not a sustainable model.
At the end of Tom Wolfe, a lot of people may remember, it was that $600 million fed in state, $300 million state went to you guys in exchange for increasing staffing levels, right, ratios. So there might be a lot of lawmakers out there. I know you guys this is budget time, that's why you're here. You want to get the word out, and that's for sure. But there might be lawmakers saying, hey, we just gave you a big bunch of money. What's the deal, Garry?
Well, the big deal is this, that we studied this, and at the time in 2022, there was a gap between what providers are paid to care for Medicaid beneficiaries and what it cost, and that gap was $1.2 billion. So it was that funding was a nice start. But you're talking about an industry that has been historically underfunded. So you've got physical plants, you've got lack of an IT infrastructure. So you're talking about digging out of a hole. So providers are very grateful for that money, but the cost of care goes up.
I guess both of you are here saying more money. We need more money, right? How can we be sure that any extra money goes to actually patient care and not the bottom line of some of the nursing homes?
Two key points on that, Dennis. Number one, in 2022, we were proud to work together on first-of-its-kind accountability provisions for nursing home providers. So now in Pennsylvania, it is state law that 70% of a nursing home provider's total costs have to go to resident and resident-related care costs, and that includes staffing. But let me make this point. The average operating margin in Pennsylvania today is negative 12%. Any new infusion or investment of new dollars into the system has to go to the workforce, and it has to go to the care that we provide.
What's wrong with mandates, though, requiring a certain amount of caregivers per patient? We all want our loved ones to be cared for in the best way possible.
Problem with mandates is a lot. Mandates that are unfunded are untenable, and that's number one. And then mandates can be arbitrary in a one-size-fits-all approach. So what's very interesting about just what the federal government is putting out now is that there is a requirement to use an evidence-based assessment process to determine what is the right level of staff for the people that you're caring for. And then out of the other side of their mouth, they say, and here's an arbitrary mandate, meet these levels. The operators know what to do, they need flexibility.
Every industry is struggling to get workers. We can make mandates all you want, but if there aren't human beings to fill the jobs, what is it? Are you facing that?
That's exactly right. And Gary's referencing the Biden administration's federal mandate. To be clear, in Pennsylvania, that mandate will require nearly 8,000 new workers being hired by nursing homes, most of which don't exist today. It will cost those same providers or the Pennsylvania taxpayer nearly $550 million. And Dennis, this is without comprehensive immigration reform, no funding, no workforce development. And by the way, the Biden administration last year paused the worker visa program to bring healthcare workers here from other countries. That doesn't make sense.
Quick answers from both of you. What's the fix?
Investment and collaboration with our government partners.
How do you break through the clutter? Because you know right now at the Capitol, there's 70 rallies a day of people asking for money. How do you break through and say you really need to help us?
There are older Pennsylvanians who have nowhere to receive their care. And we can't ignore them. They are growing. We are growing in numbers. We will be heard. And there really is no option here. We have a real opportunity in Pennsylvania. We're one of the oldest states in the nation. It's a disgrace if we're not able to care for our older adults.
Okay, gentlemen. Real quickly, biggest takeaway from the pandemic, COVID-19. Obviously, nursing homes were ravaged. I saw some reporting said 11,000 people died in various homes. What did we learn?
When we make decisions at the state or federal level, providers have to be at the table.
How about you?
I would say that it has to do with not taking on more than you can do, because that's how we got into trouble, and that's what providers are saying if we're not getting paid, we're going to limit access.
Okay. Gary and Zach, thank you very much for being with us. Good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
You're doing God's work, I'm sure. Stay with us. So are we. We're going to be right back with more of it. And welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. Our analyst, Brittany Crampsey of Crampsey Communication, Christopher Nicholas of the Eagle Consulting Group. Thanks both for being with us. One of the big headlines, and it wasn't really trumpeted, but the education secretary said, school vouchers, they're still very much on the budget table. The budget's due in less than 2 months. I know it's your least favorite topic, but it is what's happening at the Capitol. It's getting done. The sausage is being made. Is that just posturing, kind of letting Republicans know maybe, to keep it there, or is it really real that there might be some school voucher?
Sure. Well, we're at the sausage-making process where everything is still on the table. So it could include a voucher conversation that was attempted last year unsuccessfully. It could include parts of this environmental package, the higher education package, adult use marijuana, a minimum wage increase. There are so many pieces that the administration has requested and suggested and booked for revenue as part of this budget that we're going to see trimming here and there. But right now, I think that everything is on the table.
Remember, this is the proposal that Governor Shapiro welched on last year after campaigning on it and promising it while he was governor at the last minute. And the Democrats have a one-seat majority in the House. All the Republicans would have voted for it. So Shapiro couldn't convince just one member of the House Democrats to vote for it, so it went away. So remember, Lucy pulls away the football from Charlie Brown? I think we're in the beginning of that part of the sausage.
Well, and that's been happening since Tom Ridge, who thought he was close to getting this done. It does. What's interesting this year is you got the Democratic governor, who's for it. You've got Matt Bradford, the Democratic leader, against it. And then you got Joe Pittman, the Republican
that was
Senate
last year, too. That was last year, Dennis.
But I understand.
How is it any different?
Well, it might be different because he's asking for an additional $1.1 billion in new record money, and maybe the Republicans kind of hold firm. I'm not going to take you in the...
We gave him extra money last time as part of this deal, and again, he welched. So
I don't know if it's fair to say he welched. I mean, Shapiro has been outspoken in his support of vouchers. His education secretary has gone out in support of vouchers, but he doesn't get a vote in the process. It has to go through the legislature.
He pushes for things he really cares about all the time.
Is there any way Democrats capitulate, especially if it's told, hey, you're going to get $1.1 billion, they want $100 million? That's less than 10%.
I would be very surprised to see Democrats vote for a voucher program unless it matched major increases in K through 12 funding, and that these charter and private schools had to meet accountability measures. Right now, they're able to reject students. They don't have to accept everybody.
Yeah,
they don't meet the same
schools.
standards. They don't have
difference.
to have certified teachers. I mean, they can get away with just about anything, and to give them the same dollars as public schools is just not fair.
All right.
It's 8 cents.
Stay right
on the
there.
dollar.
We're going to have much more discussion when we come right back.
What we have seen on some college campuses across America are people who have used these, what should be peaceful and righteous protests, as excuses to engage in anti-Semitism and in some cases Islamophobia. And neither is okay.
And welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. More with Chris and Danielle. That was Governor Shapiro addressing campus unrest across America. And there's a number of schools in Pennsylvania that have also Pitt, Penn, Gettysburg College, Franklin, and Marshall to a lesser degree. Let's think, if this bleeds into the fall, how does that impact the election?
Well, I think the problem a lot of college administrators had is it's graduation season. And that's when all the folks come in, they want a nice, pretty picture for everybody, so they're getting nervous. So this issue will obviously go to ground from the summer when all those kids go home. And we'll see if it reignites in the fall. I think they're coming off as very self-centered and ignorant myself. They have the right to protest, but occupying buildings and stuff, that's pretty old school.
I have to plead to a bit of ignorance. I called you.
You did?
Brittany, Chris, I apologize.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on the unrest?
I think that what they're partaking in is very much in line with student protests dating back to the 1970s against the Vietnam War. I don't think we're seeing anything unusual. I think peaceful occupation of spaces is a great form of civil disobedience. I do think that young people are very engaged on this, and maybe it peters out through the summer, but we would be unwise to ignore what they're looking for into November. And I do think that these students predominantly skew to the left. I think it's more of a Democratic concern than Republicans. And Republicans have been outspoken in their efforts to quash their free speech rights, and I think that that is also unpopular.
Look, protesting against a war your own country is involved in is very different than what they're doing now, which is protesting in favor of a radical terrorist group that likes to kill Jews. Totally different, totally separate, just unacceptable.
I think conflating Hamas with Palestinian civilians is not correct. I don't think that we have the time or the expertise to delve into an issue thousands of years old, but that is an incredibly dismissive position of where these students are calling for.
Let me throw up quickly the battleground state poll that we did. All 7 battleground states showed Donald Trump to some degree or another, most of it within the margin of error. Just quick reaction to that. Chris?
Well, like you asked the pollster, if the election were tomorrow, we'd have Donald Trump as president again.
It's not my favorite thing I've seen today, but Donald Trump has to survive 91 charges before he gets to the ballot.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both very much for being with us. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Pennsylvania. By the way, if you ever miss a show, we've got them all on thisweekinpennsylvania.com. Sure hope to see you right here next week on This Week.